It was considered to be a gay disease, and for someone who was within the royal family and who was a woman and who was straight, and to have someone care from the other side was an incredible gift.
In spite of the tragic circumstances surrounding her death, the relationship between John Elton and Princess Diana was one of mutual admiration and love, which resulted in an impact that was felt across generations. The dynamics of Elton's love and commitment to his late friend are demonstrated by the fact that he has served as a mentor to her sons, despite the fact that the royal drama has received immense public attention. A number of people are in a state of shock as a result of the shocking revelation that Elton John has just broken his silence regarding Princess Diana. What did he disclose to us? Do we no longer know everything that we used to know? As we delve into the specifics, we invite you to join us in this video in order to get a better understanding of how they got to know each other and the dynamics of their friendship. Let's first find out how Elton and Princess Diana first became acquainted. When Prince Andrew was celebrating his 21st birthday in 1981, two remarkable people had their first encounter at the celebration. It was a warm summer evening, while Diana, the newly minted Princess of Wales, had just emerged from her fairy tale wedding to Prince Charles. Elton John, an established international superstar, was there to perform. Diana had just emerged from the ceremony. Surprisingly, for such a large event, the party appeared to have a rather low attendance. However, it turned out that this peculiar atmosphere was the perfect way to set the stage for a magical scene to take place. In the vast ballroom, Diana found herself alone with Elton. She was eager to escape the stuffy formality of royal obligation, and she found herself in this situation. She worked up the courage to approach him and ask him to dance when the dance band began to perform a jovial Charleston. She eventually asked him to dance with her. This event took place in a manner that was reminiscent of a romantic scene from a movie. There was a dance floor that was completely empty when two prominent figures, who are typically separated by their lofty status, found themselves together. The hall was filled with the sound of laughter as they whirled around each other, momentarily losing their identities as a pop star and a princess, who were completely engrossed in the overwhelming happiness of the moment. What had the potential to become a fleeting fascination eventually developed into a profound and long-lasting friendship. Following the events of that night, Diana and Elton became almost inseparable from one another. There was a great deal more to their relationship than the fact that they were both famous in the same field. Human insight and compassion served as the foundation for it. Both of them were delicate idealists who were struggling to cope with the terrible pressures that their public identities pressed upon them. Diana, who was feeling trapped in a marriage that was becoming increasingly unhappy, found solace in Elton's sense of humor, compassion, and genuine understanding towards her. On the other hand, Elton found Diana to be a refreshing character in his friendship. It was a woman who was able to find humor in the absurdities of fame and royalty, and who treated him not as a celebrity, but as a genuine friend. They were frequently seen laughing and enjoying each other's company at a variety of public events over the course of their lives, and the world was able to witness their joyful camaraderie at these events. On the other hand, those broad smiles belied a friendship that was more complicated than anyone was aware of. The two of them were going to experience unfathomable sorrow as a result of their love, which had been a source of unending happiness for them both. In spite of the fact that they assisted one another in overcoming their own personal hardships, the complexities of their friendship mirrored the challenges that they faced in their glamorous lives. The question is, why did Princess Diana receive such a great deal of affection? And what is it that Elton John has to say about Princess Diana that everyone finds shocking? Maintain your attention to find out. The reasons why Princess Diana is so well liked. Princess Diana was renowned for her profound compassion, which went far beyond her official royal responsibilities. As a result, she was given the title of a global humanitarian icon. She demonstrated her dedication to a wide range of causes by providing financial assistance to more than 100 charitable organizations while she was married to Prince Charles. Nevertheless, After the couple divorced in December 1993, Diana made the decision to reduce the number of times she appeared in public in an effort to find a balance between her public persona and a more private life experience. Diana devoted herself to assisting those who were less fortunate, challenging social taboos, and bringing attention to issues that the world needed to address. She tended to be drawn to causes that spoke to her profound empathy, and she participated in those causes. Her primary concern was the issue of homelessness among young people. She would frequently visit Centerpoint, a charitable organization that assists homeless young people, in order to meet the people who lived there and establish personal connections with them. She was a fervent supporter of the organization. Her dedication not only provided essential assistance, but also, and perhaps more importantly, brought the issue of youth homelessness to the attention of the general public. A significant contribution that Diana made was to the fight against HIV/AIDS, in addition to the work that she did with homeless young people. When the HIV/AIDS epidemic was at its peak in the late 1980s and early 1990s, she established a specialized HIV/AIDS unit at the Middlesex Hospital in London. This unit provided specialized medical care to those who were infected with the virus. It was during this time that the virus was the subject of intense stigma. The stigma that was associated with the disease was significantly reduced as a result of her efforts, which were instrumental in raising public awareness. By demonstrating that the virus could not be transmitted through casual contact, Diana courageously confronted the fear that is associated with AIDS. She went to the extent of personally interacting with people who were living with AIDS and shaking hands with them, which led to the dispelling of myths and the reduction of fear that was previously prevalent. In addition to that, she discussed the issue of leprosy, which is a disease that is similarly surrounded by social stigma. While Diana was traveling around the world, she visited leprosy hospitals and missions, where she enthusiastically and unreservedly embraced patients. Through her actions, she conveyed a powerful message of acceptance and challenged the discrimination that people who are affected by leprosy face. She worked tirelessly to improve living conditions and medical care for people who suffered from leprosy, thereby making a significant and long-lasting impact on the lives of those affected by the disease. During the entirety of her public life, Diana never stopped bringing attention to significant social issues and advocating for a society that is more compassionate. When she walked across a minefield in Angola in 1997 to speak out about the need for more money to clear mines and for a ban on landmines around the world, she became a global sensation. Her actions took her all over the world. Just 1 year prior to her untimely passing, she delivered a speech at a landmine conference in London, where she emphasized the importance of taking action. During her visit to Bosnia, which lasted from August 7th to 10, she went on a tour of landmine projects in the cities of Travnik, Sarajevo, and Zanica. This was her last public engagement. As a result of the tireless efforts of Princess Diana, a legacy of compassion and action has been left behind, and thousands of people are now motivated to work for those who are in greatest need of assistance. In light of this, what were some of the challenges that Princess Diana faced? Permit me to delve into the specifics. Diana's personal struggles with royal life. By the middle of the 1980s, Princess Diana's friendship with Elton John had significantly deepened. This was at the same time that the cracks in her seemingly perfect royal life began to emerge. Despite the fact that she appeared to be living a fairy tale life, her marriage to Prince Charles was in the process of disintegrating, and the unrelenting pressures of royal life were having a devastating impact on her mental health. The struggles that Diana had with bulimia, self-doubt, and profound loneliness began to come to light during this time period. However, a significant portion of her suffering remained concealed from the view of the general public. The struggles that Diana was going through spoke to Elton, who was struggling with his own demons of addiction and mental illness at the time. In time, he evolved into more than just a friend. She found that he was someone she could rely on, someone she could confide in, and someone who provided her with a safe haven when the walls of Buckingham Palace seemed insurmountable. During their private conversations, Diana revealed her deepest fears and frustrations, many of which were related to her troubled marriage. She also revealed that she was a victim of domestic violence. The late-night phone calls that Diana made, during which she candidly expressed her feelings of isolation and despair, are brought back with fondness by Elton. Her husband was more concerned about the image of the monarchy than he was about her well-being, and she frequently expressed her feelings of being trapped in a marriage that was devoid of love. Due to the fact that Charles appeared to be much more interested in his affair with Camilla Parker Bowles than in repairing their broken connection, her suffering was only made worse by his emotional detachment. While Diana was experiencing these moments of vulnerability, she felt as though she was losing her sense of who she was. In Elton, she discovered a compassionate listener and a presence that was comforting to her. Despite this, their friendship was not solely characterized by feelings of melancholy. One of the things that brought them together was absolutely their hilarious sense of humor, which is one of the reasons why they are so close. A great sense of humor and a love of the ridiculous were two things that Diana and Elton had in common. When they were younger, they would tell each other stories that would make each other laugh. They made jokes that poked fun at the absurdity of fame and the strange pressures that come with their respective positions. Their friendship was truly remarkable because they were able to find happiness even in the most difficult of circumstances. The distance between Diana and Charles grew, however, as their relationship grew stronger. After some time had passed, Elton disclosed that Charles was not merely a bystander to Diana's suffering. Rather, he actively influenced the relationships that she had in her private life, including the particular relationship that she had with him. At the same time that Diana's relationship with Charles was on the verge of falling apart, something much more nefarious was developing behind the scenes. For a number of years, Elton had been under the impression that the chasm that had developed between him and Diana was primarily the result of her own issues. He was unaware of the fact that there were additional factors at play, which made their friendship, which was already complicated, even more so. Nevertheless, what was the reality behind their conflict? Well, let's find out. Elton John has shed light on a troubling aspect of his friendship with Princess Diana, which is the influence of King Charles. In recent revelations, John has shed light on this aspect of their feud. Charles was concerned about the image of the royal family, and he saw Diana's growing popularity as a potential threat to the family's reputation. As a result of her profound dedication to humanitarian work, her willingness to engage with the general public, and her capacity to establish an emotional connection with individuals, she had become the most cherished royal figure, frequently overshadowing Charles himself. Charles's desire to exert control over the narrative that surrounded her life, including her friendships, increased in tandem with the expansion of her influence within the community. The close ties that Diana had with prominent figures outside of the royal family, particularly Elton, caused Charles to feel an increasing amount of unease during this time. The royal family, which has traditionally held conservative values, was concerned about his flamboyant personality and his involvement with controversial issues, such as advocating for AIDS through his foundation. As a result of Diana's relationship with Elton, Charles was concerned that the monarchy might come under scrutiny in a negative light. Because of this, he began to exert a subtle amount of pressure on her to break away from him. Despite the fact that this was not a direct order, the message was without a doubt clear. It is possible that her friendship with Elton could be construed as a nuisance. Therefore, it would be more beneficial for her to withdraw from the situation for the sake of her own health. The relationship between Elton and Diana reached its pinnacle in 1997, just a few months before Diana passed away by her own hand. His AIDS Foundation was a cause that was extremely important to him, particularly during a time when the AIDS epidemic was heavily stigmatized. Elton was working on a charity coffee table book to benefit his foundation, which was a cause that he was extremely passionate about. Diana had agreed to write the foreword, and the book was going to include photographs of a large number of famous people. It was essential that she participate. In addition to increasing the visibility of the project, it would also contribute to the reduction of the stigma that is associated with AIDS. During that particular moment, Diana's support felt like a victory for both of them, and Elton was thrilled to have her as a part of the project. Elton asserted that King Charles had voiced concerns regarding Diana's participation in a project that many people regarded as being provocative. Because they were concerned about any political or even incendiary associations, the royal family did not want to engage in any activity that could potentially harm their reputation in the public eye. Due to the fact that Charles exerted a great deal of pressure on Diana, she ultimately made the difficult decision to withdraw from the project. Elton was left in utter disbelief as a result of this, and it laid the groundwork for a difficult and tense separation between the two friends. Not only did it feel like a betrayal to Elton concerning their friendship, but it also felt like a betrayal regarding their shared commitment to important causes. The burden of royal duty, which stifled her private relationships and made her feel like a prisoner, was more and more influencing Diana's life. And this was just another example of how her life was being shaped by it. Immediately following the publication of the charity book Brouhaha, Diana and Elton's friendship entered a state that he would later refer to as a strong freeze. Their phone calls and visits, which had taken place on a more consistent basis in the past, became significantly less frequent, and the warmth that had been present in their relationship appeared to vanish almost immediately. During this period of separation, Elton experienced a profound sense of trauma. Diana was never considered by him to be anything other than a royal figure. Her presence had been there for him during some of the most difficult times in his life. She was a living, breathing, imperfect human being. It was as if he had lost a piece of himself every time he lost that connection. Even more excruciating was the realization that Diana was not solely responsible for the decision to separate them permanently. The impact that Charles had on the situation was significant, and as a result it was even more challenging for Elton to come to terms with the loss. Diana was her own emotional demons, and she was fighting them off individually. She was experiencing feelings of isolation, ongoing tensions with the royal family, and the pressures of her public life, all of which were having a negative impact on her overall health. She began to withdraw from some of her closest friends and began to isolate herself. Not only Elton was involved, it seemed as if the walls of Buckingham Palace were closing in on her, indicating that her life no longer belonged to her in the same way that it had in the past, thereby isolating her and leaving her feeling lonely. What caused these times to come to an end, and how were they able to overcome the obstacles that they faced? Keep an eye out for these specifics. The reunion of Elton John and Princess Diana. Just when it appeared that Elton John and Princess Diana's friendship might be lost for good, a tragedy brought them back together in a way that was completely unexpected. Gianni Versace, a close friend of both Elton and Diana, was murdered in July of 1997, and the fashion industry was left in a state of shock that lasted for months. His death was a senseless act of violence that shocked everyone, but for Elton and Diana, it felt even more personal than how it was for everyone else. They had a profound connection with Versace, and the tragic loss of his life provided them with the opportunity to rekindle their relationship after a period of time that had passed. Diana and Elton found themselves seated next to each other at the funeral of Gianni Versace, which took place in Milan. This was a remarkable turn of events. They were surrounded by sorrow, and as they shared their sorrow with one another, the tension that had been a defining characteristic of their relationship began to dissipate. For the first time in what seemed like months, they were able to feel as though they were genuinely reconnecting with one another as they held hands and engaged in quiet conversation. For Elton, this moment was a mixture of bitter and sweet. Even though he was grateful to have Diana back in his life, the circumstances were extremely upsetting to him. Both of them had suffered the loss of a close friend, and the stresses of their public lives had left a scar on their connections with one another. On the other hand, during that time of collective mourning, it seemed as though they were able to put all of that behind them and concentrate on their connection. Sadly, their reconciliation would only last for a short period of time. After only a few weeks had passed, Diana's life would be taken from her in a tragic manner, leaving Elton to deal with the overwhelming grief of losing not just one but two close friends in such a short period of time. When the shocking news that Princess Diana had been killed in a car accident in Paris arrived on August 31st, 1997, the entire world came to a complete and utter halt with shock. Not only was there an immediate response of disbelief and sorrow, but there was also an unprecedented outpouring of grief from people all over the world. Pain was something that Elton John felt on a very personal level. After suffering through a painful estrangement, he had just recently rekindled his friendship with Diana, and now she was gone for good. The loss seemed to be so heavy that it was almost impossible to bear. Although Elton had always been aware of Diana's struggles, he never imagined that her life would be cut short in such a tragic and unexpected manner. At a time when the entire world was in mourning over her passing, Elton was faced with the challenging task of saying goodbye to his dear friend in a manner that paid tribute to her memory and the unique connection they shared. A responsibility that weighed heavily on him was the fact that he was asked to perform at her funeral that was being held. In that very instant, he was resolute in his intention to commemorate Diana's life, her generosity, and the influence she had on a great number of individuals, while simultaneously attempting to come to terms with the profound sense of loss that accompanied her absence. The question then is, how did the life of Princess Diana come to an end? Okay, let's get down to the specifics. On that tragic morning of August 31st, 1997, the streets of Paris were eerily quiet, a calm that would soon be shattered by the heartbreaking news of Princess Diana's fate. Princess Diana's fatal crash and death occurred on that day. A chain of events that would place the entire world in a state of mourning would be triggered by a car accident that was so devastating that it was caused by the reckless actions of a drunk driver. During the time that rescue teams were rushing to the location, their thoughts shifted to an emergency mode, and they prepared themselves to do everything in their power to save lives. During the time that Paris was sleeping beneath a blanket of stars, Diana and her companion, Dodi Fayed, were unaware that a catastrophe was waiting for them that morning. It was a cruel twist of fate that would destroy their hopes and objectives. In an effort to evade the relentless paparazzi who were following them, Diana, Dodi, and their devoted bodyguard, Trevor Rees-Jones, quietly slipped out of the hotel through a back exit. This was done under the cover of night. A sleek black Mercedes S280 awaited them outside, its polished exterior offering the promise of an escape from the chaotic lives they led in public. Nevertheless, their driver, Henri Paul, was concealing a potentially lethal secret beneath his calm exterior, and they were completely unaware of this circumstance. Paul had consumed at least 2 alcoholic beverages prior to taking the wheel, which caused his judgment to be impaired and dulled his senses during the driving experience. Over the course of subsequent investigations, it was discovered that his blood alcohol level was 3 times higher than the legal limit in France. This revelation cast a heavy shadow over the tragic events that followed. However, drunkenness was not the only thing that had an effect on Paul. After further investigation, it was discovered that he was also under the influence of medication, which created a dangerous combination that severely impaired his motor skills as well as his judgment. While Diana, Dodi, and Rees-Jones were settling into the luxurious seats of the Mercedes, Paul's outward calm belied the chaos that was brewing within him. This chaos was a dangerous mixture of intoxication and reckless confidence. As they made their way through the winding streets of Paris, witnesses later related how Paul's behavior became increasingly erratic as they maneuvered through the city. He behaved in an odd manner towards the paparazzi who had surrounded their vehicle like a flock of vultures, and he appeared to take pleasure in the attention that they were receiving. During the time that he was shouting taunts at the photographers, his reckless bravado suddenly took on a dangerous edge. Stephanie Darman, a motorcyclist who worked for one of the photographers, would later describe the disturbing scene. She would recall how it felt like Paul was playing a dangerous game with the paparazzi. one that could have potentially fatal consequences. As the Mercedes sped off into the night, he proclaimed with a resounding shout of triumph that Lady Di was going to arrive there in a quarter of an hour. He then pressed down firmly on the accelerator as the vehicle continued to speed. During the time that the car was racing through the streets, Paul's erratic driving was a reflection of the inner chaos that he was going through. While they were being pursued by the paparazzi, their cameras flashed like lightning against the backdrop of the city, which was getting darker. It became increasingly dangerous for Paul to continue to provoke the photographers by weaving dangerously through traffic at alarming speeds. His reckless behavior continued to escalate. As they approached the Pont de l'Alma tunnel, the deadly game of cat and mouse continued until Paul finally lost control of the vehicle. This occurred when they reached the tunnel. The Mercedes was involved in a violent collision with a pillar, and the results were devastating. After having been a sleek and powerful automobile in the past, it had been reduced to a mangled wreck of metal and shattered glass. While they were inside, Diana, Dodie, and Rhys Jones were all suffering from severe injuries, and their lives were in jeopardy. Despite the fact that rescue teams arrived at the scene quickly and worked tirelessly to free the passengers who were trapped, they were ultimately unsuccessful. The princess was lost to the world. Tell me about the last time he spent time with his friend. Maintain your attention to find out. In memory of Princess Diana and her funeral, Elton paid tribute to her. It was clear to Elton John that the tribute he would pay at the funeral of Princess Diana would be among the most important to him throughout his entire life. He felt an enormous responsibility to get it right, not only for himself, but also for the millions of people who were mourning alongside him. He felt this responsibility for himself. Subsequent events were a watershed moment in the history of the modern era. Candle in the Wind, a reworked version of Elton's song, was performed with a lot of emotion by Elton for the audience. The song was initially composed as a tribute to Marilyn Monroe. However, it was later transformed into a heartfelt respect for Princess Diana. After he finished singing the heartfelt line, "Goodbye, England's Rose," people all over the world began to cry. It evolved into a moment of collective sorrow, with Elton's voice acting as the emotional soundtrack to the grief that the world is experiencing as a result of Diana's passing. Despite the fact that King Charles's reaction to Elton's tribute was one of profound emotion, behind the scenes, there were some individuals who were not in agreement with the decision to have him perform. There have been recent reports that have revealed that King Charles had initially been hesitant to permit such a modern and emotionally charged performance to take place during what was supposed to be a solemn royal event. According to reports, he had some reservations about Elton's performance of Candle in the Wind at the funeral, because he was concerned about preserving the dignity and traditions of the monarchy. Elton John's deep connection with Princess Diana took on a new meaning following her tragic death, as he felt a strong duty to honor her memory. Despite initial royal reservations, Elton performed at Diana's funeral, understanding it was not just a tribute to her, but to the millions who loved her. This performance strengthened his bond with her sons, especially Prince Harry, who saw Elton as a source of support. Elton's relationship with Harry grew as he openly defended Harry and Meghan against media scrutiny, evoking the relentless pressures Diana faced. His public support of the couple created tension with King Charles, but for Elton, standing by Diana's children was a tribute to the values he and Diana shared. In recent years, Elton spoke candidly about Diana's legacy, expressing disappointment with how Charles never fully understood her significance. Elton described Diana as embodying compassion and empathy beyond the monarchy's formal constraints, qualities that continue to inspire people worldwide. Reflecting on their friendship, Elton remains committed to keeping her legacy alive, even at the cost of further distancing himself from the royal family. His words honor Diana's profound impact, serving as a tribute to the enduring bond they shared and the love she inspired in people across the globe. How do you feel about the revelations that have been made? Post your thoughts in the comments section below. I am grateful that you have watched this video. We sincerely hope that you found it compelling. Always remember to give it a like and subscribe. You can get caught up on the stories of your favorite celebrities by clicking on the next video that is displayed on your screen. Let's meet up there.